is Edward Chazen, and I'm in my 7th year teaching at BC, and I teach a variety of real estate courses. I recognize a lot of faces here, and the delight is having former students who have gone on to have such success sharing their journey with you. So this will take about 25, 30 minutes. What I'm going to talk about, maybe less, but it's going to really kind of give you an overview about working in the industry and also trends. Because one of the things about real estate, it's very dynamic, and things change, and of course things have changed a lot since March of 2020. So what we're going to talk about is all the different ways you can work in this industry. One of the big themes and takeaways is how broad it is and how interdisciplinary it is, and because it draws on so many different skills. So if you're interested in sociology or political science, real estate could really engage you, because it's a lot about how real estate impacts local communities, and also there's a lot of policy implications in real estate, and also there's something that's very complex called permitting, which is how a local regulatory agency will approve a project. You can't just build something unless you get local regulatory approval. If you're interested in finance, of course, there's a lot of ways to engage in real estate because it's a capital-intensive industry, and on and on and on. If you're curious about architecture and design and environmental studies, this is a great industry to engage your interests. So the thing that's important to understand is that much like the economy, real estate goes through cycles. And we go through periods where we have too much construction and too little demand for it, so we go into a downturn where the demand and supply relationship is out of whack, and of course that varies by city and by property type, but the consequence is the rents start to decline and the values of properties go down, and sometimes the loans that are financing the property get into distress and they have to be restructured or ultimately sometimes foreclosed on, and the ownership transfers from the owner of the property to the lender that now owns it. And then we enter recovery, and that's sort of where we've been for the last 9 months, and there's a lot of reasons to be cautiously optimistic. So we are starting to see, although variations by sector, and we have now experts who work in different sectors of real estate to talk to you about declining vacancy and a slowdown in new construction. The thing about real estate development, though, if that's the interest that you have, is it takes years to plan a project, and then when you finish it, you may actually be in the middle of a recession. So, for example, there's a lot of questions out there about the future of downtown offices. Well, right now there are 4 50-story office towers under development in Boston, and the question is who's going to occupy them? And these are massive buildings of 1 million square feet or more. So you have to be very aware for your own career planning, as much as you can look ahead and talk to people who you network with. Where's the direction of the different property sectors? What's hot and what's not? And I'm going to talk about that. Because when you think about directing your own career and taking control of your own career development and professional development, obviously you want to go where the sectors are strongest and where the money is flowing, because that's where there'll be growth and job opportunities. So what's going on now, and I've highlighted, with bold and underlining a couple of things. There's a lot of uncertainty about demand in certain sectors, the biggest being downtown offices. And the whole economy and sort of ecology of downtowns is going through a lot of disruption, meaning all the small restaurants, all the small after-hour bars, all the dry cleaners, the flower shops, the printers, they all depend on the delis, the coffee shops, they all depend on a high occupancy among office buildings. There's a real interesting company called Castle Systems, that's spelled with a K. They operate the turnstiles, security turnstiles in office building lobbies. And they track swipes. How many times are people with authorized cards swiping their card to go up an elevator into their office? And right now in downtown Boston, it's about 45%. Means the buildings are not 45% leased, but they're only 45% occupied. In downtown Washington, it's even lower. San Francisco, it's even lower. New York City, it's about 35%. So you really have to think about what is going to bring people back to work in their offices downtown. And that's a big open question mark in terms of office demand. And then secondly, on the other hand, we have very declining significantly declining cap rates. That's the first-year rate of return an investor would earn by buying a property. So the most astonishing decline in cap rates is industrial warehouses. The cap rates are under 5%, sometimes under 4%. That is astonishingly low. It means that investors are so eager to buy the property, they will accept very low rates of return to buy the property. And that rate of return is what they expect for the first year of ownership. So they're expecting, I think, they can grow their rents enough over time, because they don't just buy the real estate for 1 year, they might buy it for 5 or 10 years. They believe that they will be able to really push up the rents. And there's examples around this country, Boston maybe being one of the most pronounced, that the landlords have tremendous pricing leverage over tenants in negotiating leases on warehouses, because we just don't make enough around here, and the demand is greater than the supply, so very dynamically the rents get reset. We also have a lot of new construction finishing this year and next year that started 2 years ago and 3 years ago, before the word pandemic and COVID and masks and Dr. Fauci was not in anyone's vernacular. So I mentioned we have 4 office towers under construction in Boston. There's one being built, tremendously complex civil engineering, above the train tracks at South Station. It's going to be 50 stories. It's under construction. There's one on Federal Street in downtown Boston's financial district called Winthrop Center. That used to be a parking garage that the city of Boston sold because it was crumbling. And this company called Millennium is building a 50-story office building there. So we have a lot of construction, and the question is, who's going to fill up these buildings? We also, on the other hand, have a real passion for real estate by lending institutions like banks and insurance companies. So they're back lending a lot of money, and interest rates are incredibly low. If you don't borrow too much against the appraised value of a property, like if you're willing to accept like a 60% loan against the appraised value of a property that's well leased, you could probably borrow today at, what would you say, 3 to 4%? Isn't that ridiculously low? Or is it lower? Yeah? That's crazy. I mean, that's like, the lender's barely getting rewarded to take the leasing risk. But with Amazon, I guess they don't worry about it, right? The point is there's tremendous alumni now, budding experts, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. They will talk about this. There is so much money. And like, for example, Wade and Michael are working now on the principal side, investing in real estate. Cecilia works for one of the largest construction managers in the country, and Max works for it is the largest shopping center owner in New England, with a huge amount of construction in the seaport. They're doing lots of investing, either on their own or on behalf of pension funds, like in the case of the company Wade works for. So there's a lot of money flowing through the system. That's a good thing, because if you follow the money, you'll follow where the growth is. And that's sort of my last point. And money is coming from all over the world to the U.S., and Boston being a very preferred market. This summer, the largest office building sale of the year occurred anywhere in the United States, right here in Cambridge, and most of the money came from the Norwegian government pension fund. So there you have an example of money coming from all over the world into a local market of Cambridge, Massachusetts. They paid $825 million for a building built about 30 years ago. So from my research and reading, sort of using the metaphor of a traffic light, this is where I think it would be smart to focus your job search, maybe, to follow the money, because this is where most investors want to invest and where the demand for space is the greatest. So much life science activity. The last I heard, the vacancy rate for life science buildings in Cambridge is 1%. It's ridiculous, right? There's no space. So now other communities like Watertown, which used to be a very middle-income residential community with a rich ethnic history, particularly Armenian community, is now a hot office market for life science research. And the rents are, doesn't your company have a project there? Yeah. Which is crazy, honestly. I mean, it's just astonishing to me that office buildings in Watertown are renting for $90 a square foot, right? if you said 10 years ago someone's going to build a life science and a office building in Watertown and rent it for $90 a square foot, they'd laugh because it's unheard of. But this is the point. It's just so hot. And a lot of buildings are being converted to life science. And you'll see I have a slide about growth in life science and why that's a good place to look for a career in real estate. The distribution and logistics business is booming because of e-commerce. So right now, e-commerce accounts for 21% of all consumer spending. 5 years ago, it was 7%. So it's tripled in 5 years. So imagine if it triples again in 5 years. So the cause and effect is e-commerce. People can shop and click. But for a guy like Max, who has to lease shopping centers, he has to come up with what's going to be the experience that will bring people out of their living room and get off the couch and want to spend their discretionary income. So he has a very interesting job for really one of the most forward-thinking retail developers in the country. So the other thing that's real interesting is single-family houses for rent. Companies are building houses not to sell them, but to rent them. It's a huge business, and they're starting to use modular construction to accelerate the timetable to build these things, including using 3D printers. I just read about that yesterday. 3D printers that print out the framing of a house very quickly, like in hours, literally. They bring this gigantic 3D printer to a construction site, and it somehow produces the framing for a house in like hours. It's pretty amazing. Obviously, the downtown office building is questionable, and therefore the retail that depends on the office economy, and that's why those daily swipes tracked by Castle Systems, which runs the security card swipe machines in office building lobbies, is very meaningful. And I really think the malls are in great trouble. So I don't know if you would want to go work for a mall owner. I mean, I think that's a really, really challenging thing, particularly if it's anchored by some of these out of business or soon to be out of business or shrinking department stores. Because without department stores, you don't really have a functioning mall. And there's a lot of concern about convention business and how it affects hotels, because conventions are extremely expensive for companies to have their employees go to. And then lastly, older office buildings that really lack the indoor air quality, the modern amenities, the spacious elevator cabs, and maybe the indoor gardens or outdoor gardens that companies are looking for. That's, you should think about your career where you think the industry is headed for growth, not contraction. So who will be busy and need people like yourselves who are well-educated and ambitious and take initiative? The banks and other lending institutions like insurance companies and private mortgage funds are getting extremely active, and their lending activity is way, way up. So they need people to analyze loans and also help manage the loans when they get into some form of distress. That's called asset management. There's also a whole sector of real estate called opportunity funds. They're looking for the next best opportunity. Wade works for a company called AEW that does a lot of opportunity investing. So they're always looking for an opportunity to invest in a property that has turnaround potential or is distressed. Maybe the owner borrowed too much money 3 years ago and the bank is going to foreclose and will sell the property or the loan at a deep discount. So they've raised over $200 billion of what's called dry powder over the last 3-4 years. These private equity funds like the one Wade works for, very prestigious one called AEW. So they're always looking for new acquisitions. They need people to analyze that. That's called underwriting. Once they buy it, they need people to help contribute to the successful management and leasing or redevelopment of the property. That's called asset management. But also the landlords, particularly the larger ones, they often have to renegotiate leases. I would bet that Max's company, WS Development, has renegotiated a lot of retail leases in the last 18 months, right? So you end up becoming a partner in the restaurant or the retail store. Not intentionally, but inadvertently, right? You have to restructure it to be extremely creative. And then big area, we just had a real estate club event, was it 3 weeks ago with Cornet? A couple of weeks ago, we had this organization, which is really an international association of corporate real estate officers. They come here every fall, and they talk about careers in corporate real estate, which is working for the largest companies in the country or the world on managing their massive real estate portfolio, leases, building buildings for them, selling buildings that they don't need, and really strategizing with their operating groups on how much real estate that they need. Like if you worked in the in-house real estate department at Google, Google is gobbling up real estate all over the country, so they need people who can understand real estate, but also strategic planning for a company and finance. So I think that's where people are going to be really hiring, is in these areas. So again, think about your personal career planning. So I see three huge areas of growth. The first is called PropTech. It stands for property and technology. This is a bar chart of the amount in billions of venture capital that went into financing startup companies focused on the intersection of property and technology. It is absolutely booming. So there's software companies that are starting that create apps for landlords and tenants to communicate much better, for lenders to quickly appraise properties that they're evaluating for financing. I mean, you could go on and on. Ways for landlords to more efficiently manage energy consumption in their buildings. This is a huge, huge growth industry, and all of you, unlike me, are very comfortable with technology. You know, if you've taken classes with me, you know I fumble a bit with Zoom. But all of you, it's second nature to be savvy in technology. Companies need people like you. Companies need people who like real estate, understand real estate, but also are extremely comfortable with technology. This is one of the great growth areas for the next, who knows how many years, but every company is investing in it. Also, the big brokerage firms are investing in it to beef up their services to their clients, and one of them actually has a venture capital arm itself, which is JLL. JLL, we did have an alumna, Katie Bailey, who works at JLL, scheduled to speak tonight, but she had a last-minute commitment. But she probably could have spoken about how JLL, which is one of the world's largest real estate companies, is investing in startup technology companies related to the property sector. They have a venture capital group. I think it's called Spark. That may not be the right name, but it's sort of like that. So that's growth area number one. Growth area number two, this was already in place, but it's been accelerated a lot since March of 2020, which is healthy buildings and also the drive for sustainability. I'll give you a great example. The largest pension fund in the United States is called CalPERS. It's the state retirement system for all employees in California. They said last week that every investment they make in real estate, and they have $40 billion invested in real estate, every investment they make in real estate must be a sustainable building. So this is a huge, huge impetus. And the big pension funds that own so much property, they're using the power of their checkbook, if you will, and the assets that they control to influence this. Most large companies, technology, professional services like law firms, they will not go into a building unless it's sustainable. And a lot of people are making choices where they work based on the sustainability of the building and the workplace and how healthy it is, and also where they live. So apartment owners, developers of apartment buildings are really cognizant of the impetus and importance of sustainability in the design of spaces for living. That is a big, big change, and also a lot of area for growth. And third is life sciences. I mentioned that earlier, and we know that the vacancy rates are incredibly low around Metro Boston for these kind of buildings, and it's just astounding that a building in Watertown will rent for $90 a square foot, and Michael's company is the developer of it. But this is what you can see as the areas of growth. This is the sales revenue and the compound annual growth rate. That's CAGR. That's the compound annual growth in sales of different pharmaceutical and biotech and health-related products, all of which need modern space to do the research and development and then commercialization of the products. So this is what's creating that demand for office space and lab space in Cambridge, Watertown, Waltham, Lexington, and other parts of the United States. New York City has a very, very fast-growing biotech industry. There's an island in the middle of the East River of New York called Roosevelt Island. It's an island sitting between Manhattan and Queens, sits under a bridge. And it was a dilapidated hospital for decades that had closed. So the south side of it, south of the bridge, is a biotech campus. developed by Cornell University, and they lease it out to biotech companies. It's really a pretty incredible place. This is a huge area for growth. So where could you work in real estate? So this is not exhaustive, but it's pretty comprehensive. But these are the different things you could do. All right, so you can work in a group that buys property for a company. You could work on, like Cecilia will tell us about construction management. So vital, because you can lose a lot of money if you don't manage the construction process and the costs. You can work in corporate real estate. You can work in finance at a community development corporation, really focused on neighborhood development. Leasing is a huge industry. Maybe, other than being a successful landlord, maybe the most well-compensated part of the real estate industry. So on and on and on. At research, we have a woman that graduated here in 2018 named Lindsay Schreier, and she works at AEW, and she does investment research. So there's an example. You could do so many different things. So what do you do in these jobs? So I'm going to leave this up for about 30, 45 seconds so you can sort of read this. Sort of brief job descriptions, if you will. By the way, can we, if I send this to you, can you send it to everyone on the listserv? Yeah. Yeah, I'll send it to you tomorrow, and then you can send it to everyone. So then what are the skills you need? And then I think something that's really important you want to think about is your personality type. Because the job requires not only skills, but also if you can do what you like and what you're good at, you're going to more likely want to, you will succeed, and also you're going to be inspired to keep at it. So you should think about, who are you, what turns you on, what turns you off, what do you like doing, what are you good at doing. I mean, you may be good at doing something, but you don't like doing it, right? So, maybe at different points in our life, I did. I had a job once, I was pretty good at it, but I actually didn't like it very much. So I didn't stay there very as long as I thought when I started. So, you should think about what you like to do, okay? And this is very, very summary, but I think it's reasonably accurate, okay? So I'm going to leave this up a little bit longer to take it all in. You'll notice here, Argus. Argus is real important. It cuts across lots of jobs in real estate. Argus is the platinum standard, I guess, for financial modeling in the real estate industry, and it's sophisticated financial software, but every major investor, developer, lender of money uses it to forecast cash flows and value property. It's a really great tool, and the Corcoran Center is generously underwriting a Argus workshop that's here the 13th and 14th, I think. It's a Saturday and Sunday. If you haven't signed up, there'll be, I don't know if there are any spaces left, but there might be a few. A few. So it's really important because, and I will ask our panelists to talk about this, it comes up at job interviews a lot. Like, what do you know about Argus? Well, I took a workshop, and I actually have the training guide, and I studied it, and also I was doing some practice exercises on the training software that I got. Well, that's good. It'll move you closer to the front of the line for a job. If you say, no, I don't know anything about Argus, what is it? I don't know. You think you'll go to the back of the line or kicked off the line? Yeah. It's really, I got an email. I'm having coffee tomorrow morning. It's a true story, with a grad who reached out to me last week. He graduated in May. His name is Gavin Cunningham, and he works for a really major investment firm called TA Realty. They're like a peer of AEW. And he reached out to say, and I knew he had gotten this job starting in June in Boston, big investment manager, and he said, I just want to I want to see you and catch up, but I also want to volunteer for your students' benefit, the importance of taking an Argus course. In fact, I will tell you that a lot of companies will not even interview someone unless they say they have some familiarity with Argus. So it's a great thing, and it's extremely generous of the Corcoran Center to help underwrite it. So these are just examples of places around here that you could work. and I'm not going to go through each one, but these are leaders, and we have people here who work in some of those companies, okay? So if you're interested in development, building when nothing was there before, could be great. If you like finance and capital markets, lots of opportunities. And then there's the brokerage, which is an essential role of bringing landlords and tenants together, bringing owners and capital sources together, and bringing owners and buyers together, and then doing a lot of consulting along the way. So where have some BC graduates gone? So this is sort of different industry categories. Of course, we have graduates to tell you about their experience, but you can go to big companies, you can go to local companies, like Brookline Bank, you'll see under finance. I had a graduate who took a lot of courses here. His name is Colin Reich. He graduated 3 years ago, I think, and he got a job at Brookline Bank, and he worked in the commercial real estate finance department. They lend around the Boston area. They've been a very good source of lending for construction and renovation of medium-sized commercial properties. And he really cut his teeth. And then after 3 years, he got hired by a property owner. And they buy industrial property, which is a super hot product type. So you can work for the big companies like JLL or AEW. They're gigantic. Harrison Street under investment management. Caroline Campbell went to work there in 2019. They are a really interesting investor, and they invest in a lot of life science properties, student housing properties, senior housing, and parking garages. Very specialized. So there's just some logos of some of the names, okay? And then I'm going to finish up. I actually found a couple of jobs on the internet. So I'm going to just show you like one or two. And you can see these are entry-level jobs. Hopefully this will work. I'm going to show you this one, Real Estate Development Analyst. Hopefully this will open. Yeah, okay. So there's a website I'm going to show you in a moment called Select Leaders. It's a job site to find real estate jobs. And you can put your resume on there, so when you see a job you like, you can click and say apply. Now, of course, so are lots of other people. But the thing that's useful is you can start searching through here. You can see jobs that sound interesting to you, and you can begin to see what they're looking for. By the way, if you see 1 to 2 years of experience, as long as you took some real estate courses, I would definitely go for it. If you see 3 to 5 years, I'm not sure I would. But 1 to 2, what do you guys think? Would you go for it? Yeah, definitely. Definitely go for it. So this is in Atlanta, okay? So here you go. Oh, what happened there? Gee. Huh. See, it's on my screen. Oh, that's why I'm reading it and you don't see it, so pardon me. See, I told you, I'm really not great on the technology, but it's on my laptop, but it's not on. Yeah, thank you, Michelle. Oh.
Wait. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so do I just use the clicker to go through, or do I have to use the keyboard?
You'll probably have to use the keyboard to like scroll around
Great,
the page.
thank
but then
you.
If you go back
Okay,
to
so this is a job with this developer in Atlanta, okay? They're looking for talent. They need young people. Because for the better part of 18 months, they didn't hire a lot of people. And now they're getting really, really busy, these companies. They need people, okay? And I will tell you that there's no college around Boston that has as big a commitment to undergraduate real estate education as Boston College. You're very fortunate to have the resources here. Classes, experiential learning opportunities, workshops, experts, things like that. We offer some years 8 courses in real estate. There's no one that comes close to it. Harvard has none. Tufts, I don't think, has any. Boston University has just a handful. Babson has maybe 2. So you're very fortunate. MIT has, I don't think, too many. So this is an example, and this is what this is the qualifications they're looking for. So you see 0 to 2 years, so I'd go for it for sure. Okay. All right. So Michelle, if I want to go to another one, what would you recommend doing? I just want to show one more. Okay, go back to the PowerPoint. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to just do one more. Let me go to full screen, right? Okay. No? Oh, okay. So now I'm there. Okay, so now what? Go to here? On my, over here, okay? Like that? Thank you. Thank you very much.
You said the
Investment analyst, yeah. So this is another one. This is in New York City, okay? Okay, so this is a really big company called Silverstein. Larry Silverstein is one of the most well-known developers in New York City. He's 90, and he's still at it full steam. He's a big, big company. And they are the major developer of the office towers you see around where Ground Zero was for 9/11. He built all those big towers. Very big company. And there's a woman that graduated from BC who's now executive vice president. She graduated in 2000. Her name is Lisa Bavacqua. And they have this group where they actually lend money to other property owners. Fabulous company, considered one of the best companies to work for in New York. So there's your job description, okay? And there's some of the candidate profile. This would be a great place to work. And now Larry has, developed a whole leadership team to take over. He is 90, and he's a legend, and supposedly an incredibly great guy to work for. But this gives you a sense of, I showed you a job analyzing development projects. This is a job, working on financing projects. So I just wanted to kind of give you that sense, and then I'm going to exit out of this. Is that right, Michelle? Okay. See, she's smart. She stayed close by this time. Okay. I'm almost done. And then the best part is, okay, there we go. All right. So, so one of the things you can do here is really engage in, as I said, this really great buffet of educational opportunities here. So this is, I think it's complete, but maybe we missed a few things, but this is sort of how we curate the real estate curriculum for you here, okay, to develop your skill sets. So registration soon, and there's a lot of courses coming up in the spring. I know Professor McCullough is teaching real estate and urban action in the spring, so that will also be in the spring instead of this year in the fall. And Taylor Perkins and Professor McCullough also do this interesting seminar-type course called Urban Action Lab. That's in the spring, right? Yeah, okay. So some years we do things in the fall, some years in the spring, but this is generally pretty accurate. So when registration starts, keep an eye out because these courses fill up quickly. I do know that, okay? And then last slide, what can you do? I will tell you that this industry, and I don't know Cecilia that well, but I do know the other three, and I knew Katie, who was supposed to be here, but I bet Cecilia will also say this. Getting hired in real estate is different than getting hired at a commercial bank, an accounting firm, an investment bank, right? Very different. They recruit differently, meaning if you wait for them to come to the Conti Forum for a recruiting fair, you're going to be really bummed out. And you got to just be patient. One of the things I'm going to ask our alumni is to talk about how they found the job. You have to get active and take control of finding your way in the world of real estate. It's a very deep relationship industry. We have a huge alumni network from Boston College who work in the industry going back decades. There's an affinity group called TREC, the Real Estate Council. It's an affinity group of alumni, and it's based, we have an office in a chapter in New York and one in Boston. So we have all of these great resources, and the younger graduates like those sitting in front of you, they remember, I hope you remember, what you went through, and they want to give back. And every year there's more and more, like the guy who reached out to me, Gavin Cunningham, and we're meeting at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning at Lions Hall for a coffee. He wants to help. This was only 5-6 months ago. He was in your shoes, okay? The other thing is read up about the industry. There's all kinds of periodicals you can read about the industry. So when you go to an interview, you want to stand out as someone that really is interested in working in the business. If you go to an interview and they say, well, where else are you interviewing? You say, well, I'm also interviewing at Boston Consulting Group and Goldman Sachs. Oh, well, what are you interviewing to do there? Well, I want to be a junior consultant, or maybe I want to be a bond analyst at Goldman Sachs. Well, they're interviewing you to work in real estate. So you want to demonstrate that you are really interested in real estate. Well, how do you demonstrate it? You take courses. You try to get a summer internship. Man, is that powerful. You read up on the periodicals. You take initiative. You join active in a real estate club. All the things that say, I'm really dedicated and I'm passionate about working in this business. And then I will send this to Kimberly and she can distribute it to everyone who signed up. There are these links where you can learn more about it. An internship in the summer is really, really important. Really, really important. And network like crazy. Okay? So that's my presentation. Okay? So I'm going to invite our guests up, and I'm going to just stand here. I'm going to just ask you a couple of questions. Why don't you have a seat, if you could? And I'm going to exit out of this. Okay? Okay. So I'm going to really let them do most of the talking, but I'm going to just ask a few questions, and then it's really for you to ask them questions and engage in some conversation for the next, like 30, 45 minutes. So why don't we start with Max? Introduce yourself, what year did you graduate, and tell us about your journey and what you do.
Right. Hi, everybody. My name is Max Bechtel. Graduated in 2018 in College of Arts and Sciences. And I WS Development. We are one of the largest landlords in New England.
Yep.
It's a very interesting company. It's a small partnership of 4 people who kind of built the name for themselves, building really innovative shopping centers in New England. So we have a lot of stuff. This guy, Jeremy Squad, he's literally your age, went and started optioning land for Walmart in the middle of nowhere in Maine, and kind of continued to be in the forefront of what was going on, and is now building 23 acres in the seaboard in Boston, and has a whole big development project with the Red Sox and Fenway. And it really kind of continues to think about what is important and what is coming, and what kind of makes someplace a little bit more impactful than the stuff around it. And I think that's a really important thing for a lot of the stuff I work on. I do leasing to them. I work on a whole bunch of our outdoor shopping centers, and so we own a lot of product, like if you're familiar with Legacy Place or Market Street, or Derby Street Shops. Hang on, these outdoor shopping centers that have Whole Foods and Apple and Google and that sort of thing. And so, like I was saying, we've had to think a lot about how do we reshape what we do to create, we call them creating places. And for me, the company was kind of moving in that direction when I was applying. Like I said, I graduated, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And I knew I was interested in real estate only really recently when I was applying for jobs. I started at BC. I was a pre-med. I wanted to be a cosmetic surgeon. I was operating anatomy, and I thought that I was pretty sick. I didn't work out. Pretty quickly I realized, actually in this room I realized that wasn't the path for me. So I studied history, kind of with the same idea that I was talking about when you were thinking about your path after BC. Trying to find something that I liked, because I knew that at the end of the day, coming from a school like this one, people are going to be looking to me to prove that I know how to do things, that I guess, and accomplish, that I'm smart and that I'm capable, and I was going to do that best in something that I was interested in. For me, that was history. And so I was doing that, and then I thought I would be a lawyer, because I like to argue, and I'm usually pretty right about things. And I wanted to do that, I think, kind of because I thought that would be a lucrative path. And as a child, I was always very interested in buildings and physical space and design and architecture and all that. But I didn't really know that there existed an industry outside of rich people building buildings. Like land us to become rich and then build buildings. And taking the fundamentals course my senior fall helped me see that whole big list of opportunities that I really didn't even think about existing. So I kind of pivoted. I figured why not do that? In worst case, I could definitely off that and go back to another new plan. But I took a job at WS Development because at the time they were offering a rotational program. And for me, like I said, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I thought the industry was cool. And so for me, that seemed like a really smart path because it offered a chance to go and try a whole bunch of different things that we have. And I think it was a really fortunate place for me to land because now that I think more about what we actually do and what we actually try to accomplish, and being at a place that thinks very forward about new uses and beyond just retail, fashion stores, apparel stores, and being in a shopping center, that was a really, really clicked with me in kind of how I wanted to be involved in the industry. I wanted to be working with people who are making really cool things, whether that is the landlord who's making really beautiful projects in Boston, or with tenants who are opening a really fun restaurant and are looking for a great place for it. And I'm working on a project out in a suburb in Connecticut, in Avon, Connecticut. And for me, I think this project has been a really, really kind of way to epitomize that sort of thing. It was built 15 years ago. At the time, everything was apparel, so all the stores there are all different clothing stores. And as we have an opportunity with leases turning, every 5 years you kind of get a new chance to breathe new life into a property. My job has been to kind of come in and say, what do we want this to be now? And we've been able to use a lot of new tools and a lot of different research and whatnot to identify what is doing really well here. Even just our own rental, our tenant sales help us indicate what people want to do here. And so we've been doing a lot of new deals with new fitness people and different kinds of gym complexes. I'm about to get a deal done like today or tomorrow with this group that has a sweat kind of concept. You go in and you lay in the bed and they cover you with this infrared blanket and you watch Netflix as sweat. And it's just a really, really, really cool thing. And so for me, it's been an exciting job because my job is to go out and find those people. I literally spend days and days on the road, drive around, trying out restaurants, trying different fitness concepts, trying whatever that we're trying to convince to go to the property. And then I ultimately try and convince them to come and join us and negotiate a lease, and then continue on to evolve the property to the next level.
And Max is self-effacing. He blazed a trail for other BC graduates because he joined in 2017? 18. Pablo Mejia joined in 2019 from Boston College, and then last spring, 3 BC students got hired at WS Development. So Max did such a great job, they said, well, we have to keep recruiting from Boston College. Right.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. Okay, Michael Lane.
Hi everyone, Michael Lane. I graduated in 2018 from BC. I was a finance major and managing for social impact. I was kind of fortunate to find real estate pretty on early in my college career. I had family members that were in different parts of the business, there was an interest, and then kind of exploring that, taking a bunch of the classes, including presentation, Owen's classes, and a couple of internships. I ended up graduating and working at Eastville Secure, which here in Boston, which is a capital markets brokerage company. So doing investment sales and also debt placement, so funding loans from banks or other lenders. They really bridge the gap with investment banking, so it's kind of a dual track there along that. Not doing like enterprise transactions as you hear, but large portfolios. Really working with like institutional clients, companies like Waze. And highlights included, I sold a $3.5 billion portfolio of life science assets to Blackstone, mostly in East Cambridge, but also in two other markets. And then recently, so I spent about 3 years in Eastville, and then this summer made the transition to the Davis Companies, which is then a developer owner of buildings. I work investing out of our Fund 4, which is a private equity fund of just under $1 billion. And we invest in a lot of life science, industrial, multifamily assets. So I'm happy to answer those questions, kind of talk about your side.
It's an incredibly successful company, started by a guy named John Davis. He graduated from Brandeis in 1975. I've known him for a long time. He's one of the most enterprising guys, and he's incredibly philanthropic too. And he bought his first property. He bought a triple decker at Jamaica Plain.
He to explain to me, he levered up his parents' household
incredibly successful. His father was a dentist in Pittsburgh and guaranteed his loan so he could buy a triple-decker to make him. Just kept going. Interesting story. Wade O'Neill.
Hey, I'm Wade O'Neill. I graduated in 2017. So I'm old, I was a long time ago. And so I studied finance and management leadership in the Carroll School. And I currently work at EW Capital Management. We're an institutional investment management and private equity firm. We invest on behalf of institutional clients who can think of public and private pension funds, school endowments, insurance companies, as well as our own kind of private equity platform, which is a group of open and closed-ended funds across the risk spectrum, as well as a couple of niche asset classes like senior housing, internal capital raising for cold storage, and more wellness central housing funds as well. I work in acquisitions, so that includes anything from sourcing the transaction, calling brokers, talking to joint venture partners, through the underwriting, crunching the numbers, putting investment committee books together, and then through the due diligence process as well. Reading financial reports, negotiating PSAs, that factor, and then eventually closing, and a little bit of asset management as well.
So this company's been around since 1983, so they've been through a lot of real estate cycles, and they're incredibly smart people, and they are with a good track record for returns, they can just keep raising more money from the pension fund. They have a lot of confidence in their
With
clients.
COVID kind of, factors, we raised the most capital we've ever raised in our
Really?
50-year history, or not 40-year history. And raising the most capital, we've also invested in the most capital as well. So we think because of COVID, market turmoil, people will be on the back seat, but it's the full opposite.
Great to hear.
And anything from a distressed office building in Manhattan required to a recap of buying a mortgage for another product. So,
And
different product types and asset classes.
And Lindsay Schreier, who graduated earlier than that, right? She works there, and she stays in touch. She's in investment research. They do very sophisticated research, which of course gains the confidence of their clients. Like, you guys have a plan.
Yeah, exactly. Just emailed her this afternoon before coming here just for Monday. For a book. So every investment, we have our research team not check a box, but review and make sure that this investment is sound. So the pricing is right, market fundamentals are right. You kind of get a second look at things, which is honestly unique. A lot of the bigger institutional shops do have it, but it is unique in terms of a forefront in what we do.
Cecilia, who I actually unfortunately never knew while she was here, but I recognize you. You were a swimmer, right?
Yeah, I was on the swim team.
I remember that. That's right.
Hi everyone, my name is Cecilia O'Reilly. I graduated in 2019. I studied communication and applied psychology, and I've been in the School of Education here. And I was a diver on the swim team, so I always had practice at the nighttime, especially my mistake. Professor Chasing's classes. So I actually never took any real estate classes here, but I was always interested in real estate, but I wasn't good at math or science. I was like, and I don't want to be an architect, so that was kind of attracted to just kind of the environment, the pace, just the dynamic of being a part of that building process. So I applied, got the job into a rotational program at Suffolk, and it was a super great opportunity. I really enjoyed being able to go through those 3 rotations, and I learned so much through it all. One thing that was great for me was that they weren't necessarily hiring only people that had studied construction management. They were open to different backgrounds, which was an amazing opportunity. I was able to work on, I've been kind of siloed into the institutional sector, so working on healthcare and life science projects, which is what we have talked about today. So I worked at Boston Children's Hospital, their new Pale Flame Clinical Building, which is a $600 million project that will be attached to their main campus, new clinical spaces, and then for a few months I was able to go down to Washington, D.C. and work on a project at Children's National. They're building new research facilities at the former Walter Reed Army Healthcare Campus. And so that was a great opportunity. And then this past summer, I transitioned out of the program and am now an assistant superintendent. I'm working on a project in Seaport called Foundation Assistance. So this is actually a project that is WS developer for. And then, yeah, Suffolk kind of, they work in a bunch of different sectors. They are the construction managers, so they're the ones that are building the, managing the day-to-day process. But we work with architects, engineers, developers, not too much you guys directly, but very indirectly. And we're building South Station's project and Winthrop Center's project. We're in a lot of different sectors, life science, education, building a chiller institute here. And then we've also been getting into data centers and mission critical work a lot lately. So it's super fun being in all the different.
What a great opportunity. And just to echo what she said, Cecilia said, I've heard that the CEO, he's John Fish, who I think he may still be the board chair here at Boston College. Yeah. He, very civically minded person too. He likes to hire people for this, is it so-called Career Start?
Yes.
Yeah. So this rotation program, if you can get into that, like Cecilia did, it's great. He likes to hire people that are not trained as civil engineers. So he likes to hire from Boston College. He has deep ties here, although he didn't go here. He likes to hire from Bowdoin College, which is his alma mater. He hires from Williams, Amherst. He likes to hire people that are smart and creative and good problem solvers and communicators, but not necessarily trained as engineers. But he also hires engineers from like Wentworth and other, like Georgia Tech maybe. So he likes to hire both. And they have, last I heard, they have like 80% market share of all the construction in Boston. That's,
I don't think it's that high, but pretty high.
it's pretty high. They like, I mean, these buildings that she just talked about, Winthrop Center and the South Station Tower, that's like incredibly complex civil engineering to manage that, and they're, you know, very architecturally unique. And the Schiller Center, that's a $165 million building. And everything going on in the inside, which is going to open in a few months, I think, it's going to look very different than what it looks like on the outside, which is that traditional neo-Gothic architecture. So I want to open it up to questions, because you have a great opportunity here to hear from people that only a few years ago were sitting out in an audience like this, trying to figure out their way. So I want to really turn it over to all of you, and please just ask questions of our guests. Come on, you got to have a question. Yes, Patrick.
I just wanted to ask, like, how you went about, like, expanding your network going into the business, because I know we really focus on networking as the biggest tool to getting jobs. I was just wondering, what kind of tools you guys use to, like, build a large network.
Yeah, it's funny because like the past 2 years have been the worst for networking. But before that, I mean, I remember in school I joined a group, NAIOP in Boston. They have a student membership that's free or really close to it. And they have a bunch of different courses and different events and whatnot. And it's an organization of development, investment kind of folk in Boston. I actually met some people through it, and I just like taking some of the courses that I teach some courses there, and that's how I met a woman, Melanie, who worked at the US, and so when that all kind of was going about, she was really helpful advocate there. But I think a lot of individual initiative to go and reach out to alumni goes a really, really long way because it's a kind of terrifying thing to do, and we know that. So reaching out to folks who are in a company that you just think is cool and say, hey, I want to learn more about the company, people are more than happy to spend a few minutes with you over coffee or whatever. And I think that you can't do that enough. It's like I said, like people, it makes an imprint because it isn't an easy thing to ask for, and if you are just curious and excited to be there, I think a lot of people remember that, and it's always good to then maintain those those connections that you make because yeah, I mean, it's painfully true that this industry hires is needed, and it isn't in a career fair, so when you are graduating, it's good to be reconnecting with folks and seeing what's going on there, and that 1 to 3 year thing I think is really, really true, whether they're asking for however many years of experience, because I can tell because I work with people who are hiring at my company, they have no idea what they want half the time, so being somebody, they can say, hey, I know somebody who's really interested in our company and wants to learn about what we're doing here. It's a really easy way to just set up a meeting with that person, so just getting out there, joining some organization, and following up, I think will make a huge, huge difference.
Yeah, going on with that, LinkedIn is a great source. Definitely utilize that. I think probably also, you might have connections with people that have spoken at events or whatever. But that's great. Just getting on the phone and talking with people is important. And if you are looking in Boston or if you're talking to someone from Boston, getting on the T or taking an Uber down and meeting them face to face, it's like, I can't stress how much farther that goes. You get on, as somebody's taking a lot of phone calls, it's just tough. It's like when it's just another person, you can't really put a face to a name. But if you meet someone in person, that really goes a long way. And it's always, it's either the person you talk to or someone else that they know. Because when you expand your network, you can leverage other people's. So I'd say that's really important. It's scary, but people are here to help. Alumni are always.
And it's real estate's a big industry, but it's super small as well, right? Somebody you might meet for coffee your sophomore year, college year might be your boss 10 years down the line, something like that. It's super rare. I've switched jobs since when I first got out of school. I actually got my first job from going to this similar event. So I think another thing is just going to events like this, immersing yourself with people from honestly like just real estate, but different industries, and getting a feel for what you might like. But somebody I used to work with is now lent on one of my deals I worked on a client for. So it really does go full circle.
Cecilia.
Yeah, I would say everything that they said, but also lucky for you guys, you went to BC, so any BC grad you reach out to, they'll probably be happy to talk to you. I do think that's the scariest thing, is just reaching out, but yeah, like the powers of LinkedIn, you can kind of filter and see what are all these different real estate companies and like, are there BC alums that went there? And just kind of, connecting with people that you took classes with, either older students or if you're in clubs or organizations, kind of reaching out to like, what's your job like? Like, what's your day-to-day like? And seeing if they have friends or know of other people. I think just that grassroots networking goes a long way.
I would say for any like job or internship you look to apply for, first thing you do is see if there's a BC alumni who works there. Maybe even before you apply, to call them, get their view on the company, on the job, and really now puts your resume kind of ahead of the pack, where the person will go to their HR department and be like, oh, I spoke to this person, let's bring them in for an interview. Versus just resume dump, LinkedIn, 200 resumes, you might not be able to get that.
Initiative gets really rewarded in this industry. It really does. And also, don't be bashful. If you have an uncle or an aunt who works in real estate or knows someone who works in real estate, absolutely positively, I think, take advantage of that, right? Like you're going to go home in a month for Thanksgiving. If you're sitting around your Thanksgiving table, you should, if you are interested in getting started in this industry, you can mention that. And you never know. Your cousin says, oh, I know someone who works in that. And fiduciary, I'd like to talk to them. But what I would recommend is you don't talk to someone and say, can you get me a job?
Yeah.
You don't say that. Mike, would you agree with that, or?
Yeah, don't say that. They know why you're calling. You don't have to, and you can say, this is what I'm interested in, advice, or do you have anyone else I can talk to?
I always ask for that, so if you know somebody else I can.
That's how I got my first job, was reaching out to someone that I went to DC with, who was vaguely related to real estate, but he knew someone that worked at Eddie and I got my prior internship from this.
Your aunt may be a partner in a law firm, and she may do trust and estates, but chances are the law firm has real estate lawyers, and she can connect you with the real estate lawyer who can meet with you and say, you know what, you're ambitious, you're smart, you went to a really good school. I know a few people I can introduce to you. Thank you, Patrick. Anyone else have a question? Yes.
What's like the one piece of advice you try to give someone first trying to I would say resourcefulness. Like, do your research on what you're applying for. Read the news, right? Where real estate is such a news-driven industry where you can read a politician, like, for example, Mayor Janey ripped apart the like Boston Harbor development plan, right? And so if you're interviewing for a developer who was maybe that developer, you can talk to them about that and things like that. And yeah, I would say just resourcefulness.
I think similarly, like, every company and every job is really different. If you have the time to kind of unpack a little bit what exactly you are applying for, what your organization you're applying to, I think you can kind of either find one that aligns well with how your personality type or whoever you are, or there's no shame in mirroring personalities and kind of identifying some of a company that you think is really, really admirable. And I like, for me, I had no, other than 2 courses in real estate, I had no real estate experience. I think absolutely a summer internship is a fantastic thing to have, and I was scared because I didn't have one. But when I was applying to my job, I know for a fact that there were a lot of better on paper applicants than I was. I know because I literally met them while we were doing, we checked every box and I'm like, oh shit, this is not going to go well. But what I did do is I talked a lot about what my values were and kind of what I thought was really exciting about the industry. And like I said earlier, like I find the idea of making something new or taking something bad and making it better really exciting, and taking the time to explore it and really kind of creating something that has energy to it, has gravity to it, and that's what I wanted to do. And without really knowing it, I was kind of speaking the language of my company already. And there's a lot of ways that WS is different than a lot of other real estate companies, for better or for worse. But the kind of people they were looking to find, I inadvertently was. And I think that I was also kind of encouraged by what I was seeing online and what I was seeing, with their focus on architecture and what they were doing in Seaport. Like, I thought everything was really beautiful, and a lot of the stuff that where I've been built in Boston I don't think was as appealing. And speaking to kind of those sort of things, and we have a partner who joined the company, and her big focus is on design. And so that was, thinking and talking about that probably made a difference. And I'll just say, like, I don't think you have to have one kind of background, and I think if you don't have an internship, don't fret about it. I think what's really important is when you're going into an environment like that, an interview, or you're writing a cover letter or something, be yourself. Don't worry about being expressive and being kind of, a unique individual when you're applying for this stuff. If you can find something that aligns with you, well, that's really fantastic. I think a lot of, I've seen a lot of resumes of people coming out of school, and I think it's really easy for a lot of people to look similar. And so if you can come in and be unique, whether it is through a writing sample or whatever, and just talk about what drives you, or when you're meeting people or whatever, I think that makes a really big impression too, especially at your level, because they're not expecting you to have the world in terms of experience. They're not expecting you to talk about 15 things before this last year. They're
When
looking
you
for
go to your first job, you know nothing. They think you know, but you don't.
Yeah, you don't know anything. Sorry, like you guys. We don't either. We're not that. But anyway, so just like being expressive, being individualistic on those sort of things make a big difference, because that would be the one kid who wasn't like
Cecilia, what would you add to that?
I'm just going to touch on humility. I think that's one of the biggest challenges in transitioning from college to the professional world is that as a senior, someone applying to jobs, you kind of want to show that you're prepared, you know a lot, you've learned a lot, but then once you enter the professional world, you don't know anything. You got to put that ego aside and kind of just be open to, one, any opportunity that's going to come your way, especially I think oftentimes at the beginning you get a lot of those dirty jobs that isn't really that fun, but just kind of seeing everything as learning opportunity is just invaluable experience wherever you go. And having that hunger to learn throughout your career is what people are going to look for. And those people are, they're going to be like, okay, that's what I want for my team.
Michael or Lee,
Yeah,
do you want to add
just
anything?
add one more thing. I think the most useful thing you can do, before you have an interview lined up, is, and this brings me back to when a professor, my first financial accounting class, they said accounting's a language. You just have to learn how to speak it. I would say that real estate's a language too. It's a much simpler language, but when you're getting on the phone to talk to somebody or going to an interview, if you can just say some things that you just even sound like you're remotely interested or have been exposed to real estate. If you retain 10% of what Professor Chase has went through there, the biggest thing for me, I did a lot of the recruiting at my old job, was just this person really want to be here? Are they passionate about it? So doing things now, whether that's just reading up, being a student of real estate, and that doesn't have to take place in a classroom. That can be a lot of it on your own, so that you're able to just know what's going on generally in the world. Be able to say know key terms. That's super important, and you can do on your own. So that's really important.
You have about 5-10 more minutes? Yes.
So what level of autonomy do you guys have?
So from my experience, I was in a rotational program, and everything was extremely different throughout my experience. Sometimes one of my projects, I worked on a 40-person Suffolk team, so there was about 500 subcontractors working on the job every day, and so in that sense, a lot of times I had almost no autonomy, and I was just doing whatever work people needed done, and then other times on that same project, I was running around managing a whole entire floor of the building, trying to get a certain task done, working with different subcontractors to make sure that things were being executed correctly. So it varies throughout, and then it kind of just depends, from my experience, who your team members are, and whatever your role is, of how much trust they see in you, and if the more you work with them, the more they'll give you, and the more responsibility you get, whether that's something small or big.
I think that's such a great question. I think it's a really good way to think about jobs, not necessarily autonomy, but to kind of identify what are some key things you want to have in the quality of life of whatever job you're looking for. And so autonomy is a great one to think about, or whether you need to be at a desk or in an office, or whether you need to, who knows, be client-facing or internal, analytical, whatever. I think those are really good things to be thinking about. So great question. I am really very autonomous. I have obviously a team, and I work with a manager, and I talk to them all the time, so I'm not lonely, but I have kind of been tasked with leasing a shopping center or a 2 or 3 or 4. And so a lot of what goes on there, both in terms of the direction the shopping center takes, the way it feels in 10 years, is up to me. And I have to go and find the people, or bring in network, and go meet brokers, or identify who's doing business in the market, and going out in the market, and just spending a lot of time kind of owning and building some sort of vision, and then negotiating and executing on it, and depending its ownership, depending its tenants, or whatever it ends up being. So my job ends up being very, very autonomous. We've gone there as luckily, because we don't know anything. But I think, I think it's a cool question. But, definitely.
Well, I think you must love getting out and visiting the property, right? It's so tangible, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to being tethered to a desk, right?
Exactly, and that's what I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do. When I was doing my whole rotation program, I had a very clear vision of what I wanted to be in 10 years, how I was going to get there, and what role after the program I was going to get that was going to get me there. And then that role didn't exist for anybody, and I was shattered because my whole view of what my life was going to be no longer made sense. And I was offered this other role. I actually never did this, but like I think it just clicked for a long reason. They thought it'd be really good, and I said I'd give it a shot. And that kind of ability to get out there and to be in the physical environment and to then see, you know, a French fry tenant that I found who makes the best, you know, French fries or whatever, milkshakes or whatever.
Where's that?
Avon again.
That's a bit of a hard.
Yeah, I
project.
know, we're
It's
trying to
French
get him
fries, I
here,
don't know.
but like, it's like Shake Shack but better.
Maybe I
no,
will drive there.
yeah, you should. I was there this morning. But that I was there this morning, I think was cool. I was able to go out and that was part of my job. And I had to go one day and find this guy in Villanova, Connecticut, and convince him that children are much more expensive and much different kind of retail environment. Now he's doing really great. And so, yeah, I think it's a really cool part of it because you get to own the successes and there's a lot of visibility as to what I'm doing. A lot of risk comes with that, obviously, because you certainly own your failures. But I think that for me, it was exactly kind of that risk reward that I was evaluating and I chose to take. And luckily, it's playing out well right now. We'll see. But yeah, it's an interesting kind of way to be doing it.
Okay. Anyone else want to talk about the autonomy?
Yeah, I would say it's like selective tenants, right? Where I'm not writing $150 million equity checks by my loan son. But like someone says, call this broker, underwrite the deal, and let me know your thoughts, right? So then I call whoever it is, or speak to somebody, run the numbers, and pitch it. Whether it's just the other investment officer who I work on the deal with, whether it's a portfolio manager, etc. So I would say whatever you do, own it, right? In the real world, everything's a test, right? You're not getting graded, you're not getting a B- on something, an A- on something. But your work product is like, of utmost importance. So whatever you do, make sure you own it.
Michael. Yeah. I mean, like Michael works with this guy. He is incredibly entrepreneurial, John Davis.
Yeah.
He really is. And he has built an incredibly dynamic company. He's on his 4th fund now.
Yeah, we're looking to raise it to,
So he raises money for like, I think it's through one of the large endowments maybe, or one of the wealthiest families in the
everywhere.
region.
Yeah, like one of our biggest investors, the biggest shareholder in Moderna. Just like random or endowments. But yeah, I mean, at my old job, I was pretty tied to that. And this new one, I'm definitely like own yourself, own it. I'm not necessarily sourcing my own acquisitions, which is something that you sort of kind of build to as you build your network, because networking never stops. Earlier said. But it's definitely like my work product is expected to be, I expect to have confidence in it. So when I bring it to someone, it's not no result I can do it.
We have time for one more, and we're going to wrap up around 7:30. I think you had your hand up, right?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, is it ever like a thought in your career to like maybe branch out and start your own firm or, try to do something?
Personally, yeah, that would be something I'd want to do. Raise my own fund eventually, the best out of that.
So it goes back to someone's thing, kind of business networking, right? Like, we're gonna get money. We're gonna have to. Friends and family can only get you so far a lot of times. They need to go to institutional investors, really create a background for yourself. So I think, sure, eventually something I probably would want to do. But that's a huge step. That's a risking yourself too. As you heard from Davis, who mortgaged his family's own house to do that. So if you're willing to bet on yourself, it could be fewer risks. Or you can also lose a lot of money. We have a lot of joint venture partners who lost their shirts multiple times, but then glad it are uber successful.
A lot of developers rise from the ashes. It's resiliency. Anybody else have a question? And then we'll wrap up. Oh, thank you.
I was just wondering what exactly is a rotational program?
So typically, I would say in a typical entry-level job, you're hired for one position, and then another role. Whereas in a rotational program, they hire you with the goal that you will do a certain amount of time in different departments of the company. So it's kind of set up like an internship program in a way in which you do. I personally did 8 months, 3 different rotations. So I worked in 3 different departments of one company, and then at the end we worked together to figure out what would be like a good permanent position.
There used to be more rotational programs in the industry, like 30 years ago. There are some, like Suffolk. I think Prudential, where your brother works, I think they might have that too.
I think they do, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it was specifically his internship, but I think he, had like an option to that, like, I'd have to ask him more about it, but he's doing just asset management right now, but I think he's very interested.
Okay. Anyway, unless we have any more questions, I think we should thank our alums.